The village of Eldenwood nestled deep within a dense forest, surrounded by an air of mysticism that hung like an invisible shroud. For generations, the villagers had lived under the shadow of a chilling prophecy, a prophecy that foretold the awakening of a malevolent force during a blood moon. And as the skies darkened to welcome the lunar spectacle, fear gripped the hearts of the villagers. As the dreaded date drew near, the village was a flurry of activity. Houses were adorned with talismans and protective symbols, and the villagers gathered to discuss preparations. In the center of the village, an altar had been erected, a grim reminder of the ritual that was to come. The blood moon ritual, they called it. Among the villagers was a man named Samuel, an outsider who had arrived in Eldenwood only a month before. A skeptic by nature, he had scoffed at the superstitious tales that seemed to permeate every corner of the village. But as he witnessed the growing unease in the eyes of the villagers, even he couldn't deny that something was amiss. On the eve of the blood moon, a sense of foreboding settled over Eldenwood. The villagers donned ceremonial robes, their faces etched with anxiety. Samuel watched from the shadows, curiosity finally overtaking his skepticism. He couldn't help but be drawn to the enigmatic ritual that had held the village in its grip for so long. As the moon's crimson glow began to cast an eerie hue over the village, the villagers formed a solemn procession. They made their way to the altar, where an ornate dagger rested atop a crimson cloth. Samuel's heart raced as he watched, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. This was the moment of the blood moon ritual, the moment that would determine the fate of Eldenwood. The village elder stepped forward, his voice trembling as he recited the ancient incantations. The villagers echoed his words, their voices a haunting chorus that seemed to reach out to the very heavens. And then, with a single synchronized movement, they all turned their gazes to the moon above. A hush fell over Eldenwood as the moon's light intensified, casting deep shadows that seemed to dance in the darkness. Samuel's breath caught in his throat as he felt a strange energy enveloping the village, a palpable tension that seemed to vibrate in the very air. And then, with a sound that sent shivers down Samuel's spine, the ground beneath the altar began to crack. A low, guttural growl emanated from the earth, growing louder with each passing second. The villagers' faces were a mixture of fear and awe as they watched the fissures widen, revealing a chasm that seemed to lead into the very depths of hell. As the ground trembled, the village elder raised the dagger high, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and resignation. With a swift, practiced motion, he brought the dagger down, the blade glinting in the moonlight. And as the dagger struck the crimson cloth, a deafening roar erupted from the chasm, a roar that seemed to tear through the fabric of reality itself. But in that moment of chaos, Samuel's skepticism shattered. He realized that this was no mere superstition, no elaborate ruse. The blood moon ritual was real, and the malevolent force that had been prophesied was awakening before his very eyes. As the roar subsided, a figure began to emerge from the chasm, a figure that seemed to be composed of darkness and malice. It towered over the villagers, its form shifting and contorting in unnatural ways. Fear gripped Samuel's heart as he realized the magnitude of what was unfolding. In the midst of the chaos, the village elder turned to Samuel, his eyes filled with desperation. "You must stop it," he cried, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. With a newfound sense of purpose, Samuel rushed forward, his mind racing for a way to halt the ritual's devastating conclusion. He could feel the malevolent force seeping into his very being, a darkness that threatened to consume him. And then he remembered the dagger, the ornate dagger that had been used to initiate the ritual. He grabbed it from the altar, his fingers trembling as he held its cold metal hilt. With a surge of determination, he drove the blade into the ground, the dagger sinking into the earth with a satisfying thud. The effect was immediate. The ground trembled, the chasm began to close, and the malevolent figure let out an ear-splitting shriek, a sound that echoed with rage and agony. The villagers watched in awe as the darkness receded, as the moon's light began to purify the air that had been tainted by centuries of fear. As the last traces of the malevolent force faded away, Eldenwood was left in stunned silence. The blood moon ritual had been interrupted, and the prophecy's grip on the village had been broken. Samuel stood amidst the chaos, his heart still racing, his skepticism shattered. In the days that followed, Eldenwood slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The village